Welcome to enVista Experts on Demand, your unbiased, informative source for supply chain and IT best practices and industry updates. Today we are talking with Jimmy Benefield, Managing Partner at enVista, on the topic of optimum facility design. Thanks for being with us, Jimmy.
It's good to be here.
So what would you say in your experience are some of the biggest benefits of a facility design?
I think most people historically would say reduction of cost through reduction of labor cost, maybe reduction of space so that we can fit more in the same amount of space. But I think really in today's environment, more and more e-com, I think it's really about reducing cycle time and speed to the customer. And I think that's kind of the bottom line really for many companies.
Now, we've heard a lot about the benefits of facility design for supply chain optimization. What makes for a successful facility design?
I think actually you have to start very strategically. You can't look at a facility design tactically. You got to look out 5 to 7 years, really understand not just the growth within the warehouse, but also the impact of the supply chain, either down the line or up the line.
You mentioned the 5 to 7 year timeline. Is it timing that should dictate when you are to partake in a facility redesign or something else?
We've got an approach that we use that looks at labor, the impact of labor, the interaction between labor, material handling equipment, systems like a WMS system, and processes. We're really looking at those areas and the interaction between those areas. We can reduce labor, improve space utilization, improve processes through lean techniques, and obviously the best use of equipment like material handling equipment or WMS systems.
So if you decide to move forward with a facility design project, what are the first steps to take when planning for it?
Well, you need to go on site, and at enVista we use the 3 actuals. Make sure that you understand the actual process, the people, the place. So we go there, make sure we understand the baseline, make sure that we really understand what they're currently doing, because obviously you can't optimize something until you understand what's currently happening. And then from there we look at the data or information, what are the order profiles, the receipt profiles, and so forth.
So how do you define and plan for future capacity requirements?
It's important to really take that baseline and grow it out, right? So look at what's happening from a growth standpoint in sales, look at how the products are growing or the SKUs, stock keeping units. Look at what's happening if they're a retail environment with omni-channel. Are they going to store some of the product in the stores? Is it all going to be stored in the distribution center? So really sit down and develop a good understanding of the way the product is going to flow, be stored, not just today, but in the future.
What types of data are you looking for?
Well, in the facility design, what we're really trying to do is develop profiles. And the profiles are, how many orders per day does this customer have now, and what do we think it's going to be in the future? How many lines per order? How many pieces per line? What are the inbound receipts? How do the trucks arrive? How many arrive per hour, per day, and so forth. Really understanding these profiles, and not just for one day, but really understanding them across the year, understanding the variability on the peak days, and so forth.
Now that we know a little bit about the data you're collecting, is it okay to use averages?
No, you really can't use averages, and as I mentioned with the profiles, you tend to see variability, especially in a retail environment. You can have a retail environment where a large percentage of your sales can be done in a very short period of time. And so if you averaged out the year, you would completely fool yourself as to how this DC runs and how it should run in the future. So you've got to really go deep into the data and look at the peaks, the valleys, to overcome that variability.
Really good to know that you should avoid using those averages. What are some tips for utilizing material handling equipment within the facility?
Usually in our industry, you'll hear the acronym MHE, and a lot of times customers think of that in terms of lift trucks. But you can also use that in terms of lift trucks, conveyors, and rack storage equipment. So what's important with those 3 areas is to really understand what the requirements are once you've gone through the analysis of the data and the order profile, so that you're using the correct type, the best material handling equipment, the least cost to give you the biggest impact.
Given those requirements, is there only one way to meet design criteria?
There's really 3 ways to look at this. I mean, we tend to look at kind of a low level automation, a medium level, and then a high level. And I think it's important to run through that analysis in at least 3 different ways to look at the impact from an ROI standpoint, look at how it impacts labor savings, look at the impact on the budget. Because some of our clients, obviously, if we just went in with a high level alternative, their budget may not really allow us to do that. So we look at it usually 3 different ways.
That makes a lot of sense. Now let's talk about modeling. How is it used to develop an optimal design?
For us, we use a tool that we've trademarked called Model DC. To develop these profiles that I mentioned earlier, we run that through our model. And I think the key to a modeling tool is you can model the data, and I've done it in the past the old way, and it takes longer. What the tool helps you do is spend more of your time actually analyzing alternatives and operational alternatives rather than on data. So the modeling tool is really about speed.
What are some ways to incorporate lean principles into a facility design?
First and foremost, it's important to understand the definitions of Lean and Six Sigma, and I think many times companies tend to think of those as the same. What we found is that Six Sigma certainly can help in distribution environment, but it tends to be, because it's more statistically based, used more in manufacturing. So we tend to use Lean concepts, looking at value stream mapping, looking at Lean focus models, and really when we're doing our analysis and flow charting the process is developing a real in-depth understanding of, does this process add value? Is this a value-added process? Is this a process that's necessary for our customer? And if not, we should look at eliminating the process, eliminating waste. And Lean is all about waste, whether it's motion, whether it's travel, whether it's inventory. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, is reduce waste.
So those companies that are considering a facility design or a new building, how should they get started? What first steps should they take?
I think the first step is really to, if you're working with a partner, to make sure that they do understand your baseline processes. So we talked about coming on site and understanding those actual processes and understanding the people involved in the place and so forth. And that's the key part of that. Documenting through flowchart, we tend to use Visio, documenting exactly what's happening today before we dive into what we think should be changed for the future. Developing a really good baseline, understanding through data analysis or using our Model DC exactly what we're looking at today.
Very interesting topic and some great advice shared there. Thank you so much, Jimmy. We appreciate you coming on enVista Experts on Demand.